The contract lay between them on the mahogany desk, its terms as cold as the Boston winter outside. Simone Carter's hands trembled as she read the final clause again. Upon successful conception and birth of a male heir, all debts totaling $127,000 will be considered paid in full. Across from her, Woo Jin Han watched with those impossibly dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her soul. You have 24 hours to decide. His voice was silk over steel. But understand this, Simone. Once you sign, you belong to me until you give me what I need. She looked up at him, this dangerous man who held her future in his hands, and whispered the words that would change everything. And what if I can't give you an heir? His smile was predatory, beautiful, and terrifying. Then you'll spend the rest of your life trying. Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Hey everyone, please tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support makes all the difference for us to keep bringing you these intense love stories. The lunch rush at Beacon Hill Bistro was in full swing when Simone Carter's world began to crumble. Again, she balanced 3 plates on her left arm while pouring coffee with her right, her movements fluid despite the chaos around her. At 26, she had perfected the art of multitasking out of necessity, not choice. Table 7 is asking about their appetizers, called Marcus, the head waiter, as he rushed past with a tray of drinks. On it, Simone replied, forcing a smile as she approached the businessman who'd been checking his Rolex every 30 seconds. The smile came easily now, a survival skill learned through years of depending on tips to make ends meet. Your calamari will be right out, sir. Can I get you anything else while you wait? The man barely looked up from his phone. Just the check when you get a chance. Some of us have real jobs to get back to. Simone's smile never wavered, though something sharp twisted in her chest. Real jobs. If only he knew she had a master's degree in social work gathering dust while she served overpriced salads to people who treated her like furniture. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. The screen showed a number she'd been dreading. Northeastern University Financial Aid. Simone Carter speaking, she answered, stepping into the narrow hallway by the kitchen. Miss Carter, this is Janet from the Collections Department. I'm calling regarding your outstanding student loan balance of $127,000. We've sent several notices. I know, Simone interrupted, pressing her back against the cool wall. I've been making payments when I can. I just need a little more time. Ma'am, you're currently 4 months behind. Without immediate payment arrangements, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. The full amount will be due within 30 days. The words hit her like ice water. $127,000, 30 days, legal action. There has to be something, a payment plan, a deferment. I'm sorry. Ms. Carter, you've already exhausted those options. 30 days. The line went dead. Simone stared at her phone, watching her reflection in the black screen. Her grandmother's words echoed in her memory. Baby girl, sometimes the Lord closes one door just to open another. You keep your eyes open for that door. Right now, all she saw were walls. Carter! The kitchen manager's voice boomed. Table 12 is asking for you specifically. Simone straightened her shoulders and walked back into the dining room. Table 12 was in the corner, partially hidden by the decorative screen that separated the main dining area from the private section. As she approached, her steps slowed. The man sitting alone commanded attention without trying. Korean features, sharp jawline, perfectly styled black hair. His charcoal suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months, but it was his eyes that made her pause, dark, intelligent, and currently studying her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. You asked for me, she said, pulling out her order pad. Sit down. It wasn't a request. The authority in his voice was absolute, the kind that came from years of being obeyed without question. Simone glanced around the restaurant, acutely aware that her manager would have her head if he saw her sitting with a customer. I'm sorry, but I can't. Woo Jin Han, he said, extending a hand. And you're Simone Carter, 26, master's degree in social work from Northeastern University, currently $127,000 in debt. Her blood turned to ice. How do you... Sit down. This time she obeyed, sliding into the chair across from him. Up close, she could see the subtle scar along his left temple, the the way his hands remained perfectly still on the table. Everything about him screamed danger and control. "What do you want?" she whispered. "To make you an offer." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. "I have a proposition that could solve both our problems. Both our problems. You need money. I need an heir." His voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. "A son to carry on my family's legacy." Simone's mouth went dry. "I don't understand." "It's quite simple. You agree to bear my child, a son, and in return I pay off your debt in full, plus a substantial bonus for your cooperation." The restaurant noise faded to a dull roar. "You're talking about a business arrangement, nothing more, nothing less." He leaned forward slightly. "You would live in my home during the pregnancy, receive the best medical care money can buy, and want for nothing. Once you deliver a healthy son, you're free to go with enough money to start whatever life you choose. And if it's a girl, we try again." The casual way he said it made her stomach turn. "You're insane. I'm practical." He slid the envelope across the table. "Inside you'll find a contract outlining the terms, along with a check for $10,000 as a gesture of good faith. Consider it a down payment." Simone stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Why me? You're intelligent, healthy, and desperate. You also have no family ties that would complicate the arrangement." His eyes never left her face. "Your parents died when you were 16. Your grandmother raised you until her death 3 years ago. No siblings, no significant relationships. You're perfect for what I need." The fact that he knew so much about her personal life should have terrified her. Instead, she felt a strange sense of relief that someone finally saw her, really saw her, even if it was for all the wrong reasons. "I need time to think." "Of course." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "You have 24 hours. My driver will pick you up tomorrow night at 8. If you're not waiting, I'll assume your answer is no." "And if I say no?" For the first time, something that might have been emotion flickered across his features. "Then you'll figure out another way to pay your debts. But understand this, Simone, opportunities like this don't come twice." He walked away without another word, leaving her alone with the envelope and a decision that would change everything. That night, Simone sat in her tiny studio apartment, the contract spread across her second-hand coffee table. The terms were laid out in precise legal language. 1-year commitment, full medical coverage, $200,000 upon successful delivery of a male heir. She thought about her grandmother's words, about doors opening and closing. Maybe this was her door, not the one she'd dreamed of, but the one she needed. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her landlord's number. "Miss Carter, I hate to bother you, but the rent is 3 weeks late." Simone looked at the contract, then at the check for $10,000 sitting beside it. Sometimes survival meant making impossible choices. The black Mercedes arrived at exactly 8 o'clock. Simone stood at her apartment window, watching the sleek vehicle idle on the street below. She'd spent the entire day going through the motions of her normal routine, work, errands, pretending her life wasn't about to take a dramatic turn. The contract sat in her purse, signed and notarized. The driver was a mountain of a man with kind eyes who introduced himself simply as James. He held the door open for her without question, as if picking up women for mysterious business arrangements was part of his regular duties. "Mr. Hahn is waiting for you at his home," James said as they pulled into Boston traffic. "It's about a 20-minute drive to Beacon Hill." Of course he lives on Beacon Hill, Simone thought. The most exclusive neighborhood in Boston, where old money and new power intersected in perfectly manicured streets. The house, mansion really, stood behind wrought iron gates that opened silently as they approached. Georgian architecture, red brick and windows that glowed with warm light against the October evening. It was the kind of home she'd walked past countless times, wondering what kind of life existed behind those perfect facades. Woo Jin Han waited in the foyer, having traded his business suit for dark jeans and a white button-down shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. The casual clothes revealed the lean muscle beneath the expensive fabric, the way he moved with predatory grace. "You came," he said, and she caught something that might have been relief in his voice. "I signed the contract." She pulled the envelope from her purse, her hands steadier than she felt. He took it without looking inside. "Good. James will bring your things tomorrow." "My things?" You'll be living here during the pregnancy. It's in the contract. Right. She'd read that part. But somehow it hadn't felt real until this moment. I haven't quit my job yet. You don't need to quit, you're fired. At her shocked expression, he continued, I bought the restaurant this afternoon. Consider it a severance package. You bought? Simone shook her head. You can't just rearrange people's lives like that. I can, and I did. He gestured toward a set of double doors. Shall we discuss the details in my study? The study was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a fireplace that cast dancing shadows across the room. Wu Jin poured himself a glass of something amber from a crystal decanter, but didn't offer her any. You'll have your own wing of the house, he said, settling into the chair behind his massive desk. Complete privacy. Your own entrance, if you prefer. A housekeeper will handle meals and cleaning. What about you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. What about me? Where will you be in all this? His smile was sharp. Wherever I need to be, to ensure the contract is fulfilled. Heat crept up her neck. I know what you meant. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. The conception will happen when you're ovulating. Until then, we're simply two people sharing a house. The clinical way he discussed it made her feel like a broodmare, which she supposed was exactly what she was. And after, when I'm pregnant. I'll ensure you have everything you need. The best doctors, proper nutrition, no stress. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. I want this child to be healthy, Simone. That means keeping you healthy and happy. Happy, she repeated, like a well-cared-for pet. Something flickered in his eyes, anger, maybe, or hurt. You agreed to this arrangement. I know. She stood, suddenly needing to move. I just need to understand what my life is going to look like for the next year. Comfortable, safe, boring, probably. He rose as well, moving to the window that overlooked the garden. I work long hours, I travel frequently. Most of the time you'll have the house to yourself. What kind of work do you do? The pause was long enough to be significant. Import and export. Family business. She'd heard that phrase before, usually in movies about organized crime. The thought should have terrified her, but instead she felt a strange thrill. Her life had been so predictable, so safe and small. Maybe danger was exactly what she needed. Show me to my room, she asked. He led her up a curved staircase to the second floor, down a hallway lined with artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses. Her wing was at the far end, a sitting room, bedroom, and bathroom that were larger than her entire apartment. The kitchen is downstairs if you get hungry. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, arrives at 7 each morning. He paused in the doorway. Is there anything else you need? Just one thing. She turned to face him. Why me, really? You could have any woman you wanted. Could I? His smile was bitter. You think women are lining up to bear children for a man like me? What kind of man are you? The kind your mother warned you about. He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her pulse quicken. The kind who gets what he wants no matter the cost. And what you want is a son. What I want, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, is to ensure my family's legacy continues. Everything else is secondary. Everything? He reached out, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. The touch was feather-light, but it sent electricity shooting through her entire body. Everything. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in her beautiful prison, with the lingering scent of his cologne and the memory of his touch burning on her skin. Simone walked to the window and looked out at the garden below. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sound of the city, traffic, sirens, life continuing as normal, while hers had just taken a sharp turn into the unknown. She thought about calling someone. But who? She had no close friends, no family. The isolation that had made her perfect for Wu Jin's arrangement suddenly felt overwhelming. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. It was Mrs. Chen, a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes. Mr. Han asked me to bring you some tea, she said, setting a tray on the coffee table, and to let you know that breakfast is served at 8. But I can adjust the time if you prefer. Thank you. Simone accepted the delicate porcelain cup gratefully. Mrs. Chen, how long have you worked for Mr. Han? 5 years now. The older woman's expression remained carefully neutral. He's a good employer, fair but demanding. Is he? Simone struggled for the right words. Is he dangerous? Mrs. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Han is a man who protects what's his, she said finally. As long as you're under his roof, you're safer than you've ever been. After Mrs. Chen left, Simone sat in the window seat with her tea, watching the lights of Boston twinkle in the distance. Safer than she'd ever been. It was an odd comfort considering she'd just signed a contract to bear a stranger's child. But as she settled into the impossibly soft bed later that night, surrounded by luxury she'd never dreamed of experiencing, Simone couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her life. Only time would tell which. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Simone had settled into a routine that felt surreal in its normalcy. She woke each morning in Egyptian cotton sheets, ate breakfast prepared by Mrs. Chen, and spent her days reading in the library or walking through the meticulously maintained garden. It was the most relaxed she'd been in years, and somehow that made everything feel more unsettling. Woo Jin was a ghost in his own house. She heard him sometimes, the low murmur of phone conversations in Korean, the sound of his car leaving early in the morning or returning late at night. But their paths rarely crossed, and when they did, he was politely distant, as if she were a house guest he was too well-mannered to ignore. It was driving her slowly insane. "You're ovulating," he said without preamble, appearing in the library doorway on a Thursday afternoon. Simone looked up from her book, heat flooding her cheeks. "Excuse me?" "According to the tracking app Dr. Morrison recommended, your cycle indicates optimal fertility for the next 3 days." He stepped into the room, and she noticed he'd changed from his usual business attire into dark jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes look even more intense. "You have an app tracking my cycle." "We both do. Doctor." Morrison insisted on precision. He moved closer, and she caught that familiar scent of his cologne. "Unless you have objections?" Simone closed her book, her heart hammering against her ribs. They'd both known this moment would come, had discussed it in clinical terms with the fertility specialist he'd insisted she see. But knowing and experiencing were two very different things. "No objections," she managed. "I just thought, I don't know what I thought. That I'd seduce you first?" His smile was sharp. "This is a business arrangement, remember?" "Right. Business." She stood, smoothing her hands down her jeans. "So how do we... what's the protocol here?" "Dinner first. Dr. Morrison says stress can impact conception, and you look like you're about to bolt." He wasn't wrong. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but where could she go? Back to her studio apartment and crushing debt? Back to serving overpriced salads to people who treated her like she was invisible? "I'm not going anywhere," she said, lifting her chin. "Good." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Chen prepared something special tonight. 7 o'clock. Dinner was an elaborate affair in the formal dining room, complete with candles and wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to be. Woo Jin had changed into a black button-down that made him look like he'd stepped off the cover of a magazine, and Simone found herself grateful for the simple black dress Mrs. Chen had mysteriously left on her bed. "Tell me about your family," Woo Jin said as they worked through the first course. "There's not much to tell. My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. My grandmother raised me after that." Simone took a sip of wine, letting the warmth settle her nerves. "What about yours?" "Traditional Korean family. My father built the business from nothing. Expected his sons to carry on the legacy." His jaw tightened. "My older brother was supposed to inherit everything, but he died 5 years ago." "I'm sorry. Car accident, like your parents', except his wasn't an accident." The words were flat, matter of fact, but Simone caught the pain underneath. "Someone killed him?" "Rival family. They thought eliminating the heir would weaken us." Woo Jin's smile was cold. They were wrong. The implication hung in the air between them. Simone set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "Is that why you need a son? To continue some kind of business war?" "I need a son, because family is everything in Korean culture. Without an heir, everything my father and brother died for becomes meaningless." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "But I won't let my child grow up in the same world that killed my brother. This arrangement ensures he'll be safe, raised away from all of this." "All of what exactly?" "You don't want to know." "Maybe I do." The wine was making her bold. "Maybe I deserve to know what kind of father my child will have." Wu Jin was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "I import and export goods through Boston Harbor. Some of those goods aren't strictly legal. Some of the people I do business with prefer to settle disputes with violence rather than lawyers." "You're telling me you're actually in the Mafia. I'm telling you I'm a businessman who operates in gray areas." He reached across the table, his fingers covering hers. "But I'm also telling you that no harm will ever come to you or our child. I'd die before I let that happen." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. "Why are you being honest with me?" "Because you asked. And because—" He trailed off, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. "Because you deserve to know what you're getting into." The touch was electric, sending heat shooting up her arm and straight to her core. This was supposed to be clinical, businesslike. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for this dangerous, complicated man. "Wu Jin," she whispered. "We should go upstairs," he said, his voice rough. Her bedroom had been transformed. Candles flickered on every surface, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Rose petals were scattered across the bed, and soft music played from hidden speakers. "Mrs. Chen?" Simone asked. "She's a romantic." Wu Jin closed the door behind them, and suddenly the room felt much smaller. "If this makes you uncomfortable—" "It doesn't." The words surprised her with their honesty. "It's beautiful." He moved closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. "You're beautiful." "This is supposed to be just business," she reminded him, even as she leaned into his touch. "I know." His thumb traced her lower lip. "But it doesn't feel like business anymore." When he kissed her, it was nothing like she'd expected. Gentle, almost reverent, as if she was something precious he was afraid to break. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he deepened the kiss. "Simone," he murmured against her lips. "Are you sure?" Instead of answering, she began unbuttoning his shirt, her fingers trembling slightly. He caught her hands, stilling them. "We don't have to do this tonight. We have 3 days." "I want to," she said, meeting his eyes. "I want you." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise. Maybe, or something deeper. "This changes things." "I know." He lifted her onto the bed with careful hands, his touch worship rather than possession. And as he made love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes, Simone realized she was in serious trouble. This was supposed to be just a contract, just a means to an end. But somewhere between his gentle touches and whispered endearments in Korean, she'd started falling for the man who was supposed to be nothing more than a business arrangement. Later, as she lay in his arms listening to his steady heartbeat, Wu Jin's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He reached for it with his free hand, his body tensing as he read the message. "What is it?" Simone asked. "Nothing important." But his voice had gone cold, distant. "I need to make a call." He slipped from the bed, pulling on his jeans as he headed for the door. "Get some sleep. I'll see you in the morning." And just like that, the spell was broken. Simone pulled the sheet up to her chin, watching him disappear into the hallway. Through the door, she could hear him speaking rapidly in Korean, his voice sharp with anger. She closed her eyes, trying to recapture the feeling of safety she'd had in his arms. But the business world was calling him back, reminding her that no matter how tender he'd been, no matter how much it had felt like making love rather than fulfilling a contract, she was still just a means to an end. The thought should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it only made her more determined to protect her heart from a man who'd already warned her he was dangerous. 2 months later, the pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. Simone stared at the plastic stick in her trembling hands, a mixture of triumph and terror coursing through her veins. She'd done it. She'd fulfilled her part of the bargain. In 7 months, she'd deliver Wu Jin's heir and walk away with enough money to start over anywhere she wanted. So why did the thought of leaving make her chest ache? "Simone?" Mrs. Chen's voice came through the bathroom door. "Mr. Han is asking for you in his study." "I'll be right there," Simone called back, her voice steadier than she felt. She found Woo Jin behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean in a tone that made the hair on her arms stand up. When he saw her, he ended the call abruptly. "You wanted to see me?" she said, hovering in the doorway. "Come in. Close the door." His voice was clipped, professional. The man who'd held her so tenderly just weeks ago had been replaced by the cold businessman she'd first met. She settled into the chair across from his desk, the pregnancy test hidden in her pocket like a secret. "Is everything all right?" "That depends." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "Is there something you need to tell me?" Her heart hammered against her ribs. "What do you mean?" "Dr. Morrison called your appointment yesterday." His expression was unreadable. "Congratulations." The word hung between them like a challenge. Simone pulled the test from her pocket and placed it on his desk. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "Now. I needed a moment to process it myself." Woo Jin picked up the test, staring at the two pink lines with an expression she couldn't read. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," she admitted. "Excited, confused, all at the same time. And physically?" "Fine so far. A little nauseous in the mornings, but Dr. Morrison says that's normal." He nodded, setting the test down carefully. "I've arranged for additional security. You'll have a bodyguard with you whenever you leave the house." "Is that necessary?" "Yes." The finality in his voice brooked no argument. "There are people who would use you to get to me, especially now." "What people?" "The kind who killed my brother." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the garden. "I told you this world was dangerous, Simone. Now that you're carrying my child, that danger extends to you." Fear crept up her spine. "Maybe I should go somewhere else. Stay with friends until—" "You have no friends." The words were brutal in their honesty. "And you're not going anywhere. This house is the safest place for you and my child." "My child, not our child." The distinction cut deeper than it should have. "So, I'm a prisoner now?" "You're protected." He turned back to her, his expression softening slightly. "I know this isn't what you signed up for." "Actually, it is." She stood, lifting her chin. "I signed up to bear your child and deal with whatever that entailed. I just didn't expect to feel like a target." "You're not a target. You're—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "I'm what?" "Nothing. Forget it." He moved back to his desk, the walls going up again. "Mrs. Chen will adjust your diet according to Dr. Morrison's recommendations. You'll see him weekly now." "Woo Jin—" "That's all." He was already reaching for his phone, dismissing her. "James will drive you to your appointment Friday." Simone stood there for a moment, wanting to say something, anything, to bridge the sudden distance between them. But what was there to say? She was doing exactly what he'd hired her to do. The next few weeks passed in a blur of doctor's appointments, vitamin supplements, and increasingly elaborate security measures. The bodyguard, a silent mountain of a man named Marcus, followed her everywhere. The house felt more like a fortress, with new cameras and additional staff who watched her with professional detachment. Woo Jin became a ghost again, present but untouchable. He asked about her health, ensured she had everything she needed, but the warmth from that night 3 months ago had vanished completely. It was as if the pregnancy had reminded him that she was just a vessel for his heir, nothing more. The realization hit her one evening as she sat alone in the library, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. She'd fallen in love with him, completely, irrevocably, stupidly in love with a man who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. "Stupid," she whispered to herself, "so incredibly stupid." "What's stupid?" She looked up to find Woo Jin in the doorway, still in his business suit despite the late hour. He looked exhausted, she realized, dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. "Nothing important?" she said, echoing his words from that night. He stepped into the room and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something else, cigarette smoke and something metallic that made her stomach turn. "You've been smoking," she said. "Old habit." He moved to the liquor cart, pouring himself a generous glass of whiskey. "Stress brings it out." "What kind of stress?" "The kind that gets people killed." He downed half the glass in one swallow. "There's been some complications with business." The kind of complications that require you to come home smelling like blood. His hand stilled on the glass. You should go to bed, Simone. Should I? Or should I ask why my bodyguard has been carrying a gun for the past week? Marcus has always carried a gun. Not where I could see it. She stood, moving closer. What's happening, Woojin? What aren't you telling me? Nothing you need to worry about. I'm carrying your child. Everything that affects you affects me now. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe. Or fear. That's exactly why you don't need to know. Because I'm just an incubator? A temporary inconvenience you have to protect until I deliver? Don't. His voice was sharp, warning. Don't what? Don't point out that you've barely spoken to me since you found out I was pregnant. Don't mention that you treat me like a stranger. You are a stranger. The words were like a slap. This is a business arrangement, remember? You're here to give me an heir, not to play house. The cruelty in his voice made her step back. Right. How could I forget? She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Simone, wait. No. She didn't turn around. You've made your position perfectly clear. I'll stay in my lane from now on. That's not what I... Good night, Mr. Han. She walked out of the library with her head high and her heart breaking, leaving him standing there with his whiskey and his walls. Later that night, she lay in bed listening to him pace in his study below, the sound of his footsteps like a drumbeat against her heart. She pressed her hand to her stomach, where their child was growing, and whispered a promise. I won't let him hurt us, she said softly. Whatever happens, I'll protect you from his indifference. But even as she said the words, she knew it was already too late. She was in love with a man who would never love her back, carrying a child he saw as nothing more than a legacy, and in 6 months she'd have to walk away from both of them. The attack came on a Tuesday morning in March, when Boston was caught between winter's last gasp and spring's tentative arrival. Simone was in the garden, her hand resting on her now prominent belly, as she watched the early crocuses push through the soil. At 6 months pregnant, she felt like she was carrying a basketball, but Dr. Morrison assured her everything was progressing normally. Marcus stood nearby, his usual silent presence when his earpiece crackled to life. She saw his expression change, saw his hand move to his weapon. Ma'am, we need to go inside, now. What's wrong? Please, Ma'am, inside. The urgency in his voice sent ice through her veins. She let him guide her toward the house, her heart hammering as black SUVs screeched to a halt outside the gates. Where's Woojin? She asked as Marcus ushered her through the kitchen. Safe house, you're going to meet him there. But they never made it to the safe house. The men came through the front door like a storm, dressed in black and moving with military precision. Marcus shoved Simone behind the kitchen island, his gun already in his hand. Stay down, he ordered, then spoke rapidly into his earpiece in Korean. The gunfire was deafening in the enclosed space. Simone pressed herself against the cabinet, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly as chaos erupted around her. She could hear Marcus shouting, the sound of running feet, breaking glass. Then silence. Mrs. Han? A voice called out, heavily accented. We know you're here. Come out, and no one else gets hurt. Mrs. Han. They thought she was Woojin's wife. I'm not... She started to call out, but Marcus's hand clamped over her mouth. Don't, he whispered, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. They'll kill you either way. Heavy footsteps approached the kitchen. Simone closed her eyes, praying to her grandmother's God for the first time in years. The explosion of sound and fury that followed was like nothing she'd ever experienced. Men shouting in Korean, more gunfire, the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Through it all, one voice rose above the chaos, Woojin's voice, cold and deadly and absolutely furious. When the silence came again, it was different, final. Simone. Woojin's voice was gentle now, careful. It's safe. You can come out. She opened her eyes to find him crouched in front of her, his expensive suit torn and bloody, his face a mask of barely controlled rage, but his hands were gentle as they reached for her. Are you hurt? He asked, his eyes scanning her body for injuries. I'm fine. The baby's fine. She let him help her to her feet, trying not to look at the bodies scattered around the kitchen. Marcus, we'll be fine. Bullet grazed his head, but he's tough. Woojin's hands framed her face, his thumb stroking her cheeks. I'm sorry, I'm so fucking sorry. Who were they? The Kozlov family. Russians who think they can move in on my territory. His jaw clenched. They wanted to send a message. By killing me? By taking what's mine? The possessiveness in his voice made her shiver. But they made a mistake. They came after you. The way he said it, like she was more than just a contract, more than just a means to an end, made her heart skip. Wu Jin? We're leaving, tonight. He was already moving, pulling out his phone. I have a house in the mountains, completely secure. You'll be safe there. For how long? Until this is over. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there she'd never seen before. Fear. Until I can guarantee that no one will ever threaten you or our child again. Our child, not my child. The distinction made her chest tight. The mountain house was a fortress, disguised as a luxury cabin, hidden in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked pristine wilderness, but Simone could see the security cameras hidden among the trees, the armed guards patrolling the perimeter. How long have you owned this place? She asked as Wu Jin carried her bags to the master bedroom. I bought it after my brother died, somewhere to disappear if things went bad. He set the bags down, turning to face her. I never thought I'd need to bring anyone else here. Lucky me. Simone. He stepped closer, his expression serious. What happened today that can never happen again? I won't let anyone hurt you, because I'm carrying your heir. Because you're... He stopped, jaw clenching. Because you matter to me. The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. I matter to you, she repeated slowly. More than I expected. More than I wanted. His hand came up to cup her cheek. More than is safe for either of us. Wu Jin, I know what you're going to say. This complicates things, changes the arrangement. Does it? Yes. His thumb traced her lower lip. Because I can't let you go anymore. Contract or no contract, you're mine now, both of you. Give me an heir and I'll pay your debts, she whispered, echoing his original proposition. Fuck the heir, he said roughly. I want you, just you, for as long as you'll have me. When he kissed her, it was nothing like that first gentle exploration months ago. This was possession, claim, promise. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he backed her toward the bed. The baby, she started to protest, is fine. Dr. Morrison cleared you for normal activity, remember? His smile was wicked. Besides, I've been going crazy these past months, watching you grow round with my child and not being able to touch you. You could have touched me. I wanted you to. I was trying to protect you. From me, from this world, from feelings that were never supposed to be part of the deal. He pressed his forehead against hers. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. She smiled up at him. But you're my idiot now. Is that a yes? To staying, to this, to us? That's a yes to everything. She pulled his head down for another kiss. But I have one condition. Name it. No more secrets. No more protecting me from the truth. If we're doing this, we're doing it as equals. Even if the truth is dangerous, especially then. She met his eyes steadily. I'm not some fragile flower, Wu Jin. I'm a woman who survived losing her parents, who put herself through school, who agreed to bear a stranger's child to pay off crushing debt. I can handle whatever your world throws at us. Our world, he corrected. It's our world now? Our world, she agreed. As he made love to her with the snow falling outside and their child moving between them, Simone realized that her grandmother had been right about doors opening and closing. She'd walked through the door marked desperation and found herself in a room called love. And she was never leaving. Years had passed since that terrifying day in Boston, and the mountain house had become their sanctuary. What started as a hiding place had transformed into a home filled with laughter, love, and the chaos that came with raising children. Simone stood at the kitchen window, watching Wu Jin teach their 4-year-old son David how to properly hold a baseball bat in the backyard. Their daughter Grace, barely 2, toddled around them in circles, chattering in the mixture of English and Korean that had become the soundtrack of their lives. Appa, like this? David asked, adjusting his grip. Perfect, son. Now remember what I taught you about following through. The sight of her dangerous, powerful husband patiently coaching their children never failed to make her heart skip. The man who commanded fear and respect in the business world became putty in his children's hands. "Mama!" Grace called out, spotting her in the window. "Mama, watch!" Simone stepped onto the deck, her hand resting on her growing belly. Baby number 3 was due in the fall, and this time they decided to be surprised about the gender. "I'm watching, baby girl," she called back. Wu Jin looked up at her, that smile that was reserved only for his family lighting up his face. "How are you feeling?" "Like I swallowed a watermelon," she said, settling into the porch swing he'd installed just for her pregnancies. "Dr. Chen says that's normal for 7 months," he said, jogging over to press a kiss to her forehead. "Dr. Chen says a lot of things." She caught his hand, intertwining their fingers. "The Kozlovs?" "Handled." His expression darkened slightly. "They won't be a problem anymore." It had taken 3 years to completely eliminate the threat. 3 years of living in their mountain fortress, while Wu Jin systematically dismantled the Russian operation piece by piece. But he'd kept his promise. No one would ever threaten his family again. "And the Boston house? Ready for us whenever you want to go back." He squeezed her hand. "Though I'm partial to our mountain life." "Me too." She watched David finally connect with the ball, sending it sailing into the trees while Grace clapped and cheered. But the kids should know the city too. Experience both worlds. "Both worlds," he agreed. "Just like their parents." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink